Commissioner Fathman, are you here? Melanie? Okay, good enough. Commissioner Hamilton, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Catlin, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson, are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Coder, are you here?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, is Commissioner Robinson present? Okay, don't see him. Commissioners, has anyone read the minutes of the July 29th, 2020 Preservation Board?
Yes. I move that we accept the minutes from the last month's meeting.
Is there a second?
Second, Richardson.
Okay, any discussion, any changes? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting these as our minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, those will be our minutes. Then looking through the agenda. Other than changing agenda item E to agenda item D, does anybody have any changes they need to make? Does anybody need to recuse themselves from the discussion of any of these items? Okay, then this will also be our agenda. Let's begin the meeting. This is an appeal of denials. I will ask that you introduce all the evidence you want to make your case, and I will ask you to identify yourself before you begin to testify, and I will ask you if you're going to tell the truth. Beginning agenda item A, 2341 South 12th Street. Let's begin with staff.
Okay. This is 2341 South 12th Street. I'm Andrea Gagan. I swear to tell the truth. I need to enter into the record ordinance, enabling ordinance 64689, amended by 64925. Ordinance 62382, the Soulard Neighborhood Historic District Ordinance. On the application, the agenda, the PowerPoint presentation, and a letter from Fred Anders stating that it's a semi-public facade on the south elevation. Okay. This is the building at 2341 South 12th Street. Initially, I made a mistake saying it was the side elevation was a public facade, but it is actually a semi-public facade because it is more than 15 feet between it and the neighboring building to the south. This is a site plan showing the location of the building, and it's on this elevation here that that we're talking about. There's on the windows on the south side elevation, there's 6 windows, 2 on the first floor, 2 on the second, and 2 on the third. And this is a photograph of one of the windows on the south elevation. We received a Citizen Service Bureau complaint regarding windows being installed without a permit at 2341 South 12th Street. An inspection was completed and a violation letter was sent to the owner. The permit for the front windows, which complied with the Historic District standard, was approved. The owner has applied to retain 6 fiberglass windows on the south elevation, which is considered a semi-public facade under the Historic District standards. The application was denied and the owners have appealed. And that's now being brought before the Preservation Board. The replacement windows are fiberglass material, and they don't have the profiles or dimensions of a historic window, as they have a shortened lift rail, an offset meeting rail, and lack a false putty line. The brick mold and eyebrows of the window have also been capped with aluminum paneling, which is not allowed under the standards. There's some close-up views of the panning and the lift rail, which is very short here. And this is just the window section drawing showing the offset meeting rail here, the lack of a putty line, and the short lift rail. This is just some context across the street and on either side of 2341 South 12th Street. The 6 windows on the south side have been placed without a permit. The elevation is defined under the standards as a semi-public facade because it faces the side yard of more than 15 feet in width. We feel that it would be visually dominant if there were not foliage there, which we do not consider a permanent structure. So although when the trees are leafed out, it's not super visible, it would be if that tree was not there. The windows do not comply with the Soulard Historic District standards and material profiles, dimensions, and the brick and molded eyebrows have been wrapped with aluminum. The Cultural Resources recommends, therefore, that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial as the stall windows do not comply with the Soulard Neighborhood Local Historic District standards. Question?
Great, thank you. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Gagan? If you have one, wave your hand wildly and I'll call on you. Alderman Coder?
Thank you, Chairman. Andrea, has the neighborhood weighed in? Was there a letter of support? or
No, they
opposition?
have not.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Let's hear from the appellant.
And the appellant is Peter Burley.
Okay. Mr. Burley?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to present. I think for some reason it appears that these slides do not, not be displayed correctly.
Just a sec. We're adjusting it.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
A lot bigger. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. So I'd like to present some sort of historical background. I think what is most significant here is the photo that we're seeing here, which was not presented in the previous slide, actually shows these windows from their most visible perspective when viewed from the street, in the sense that they're very, very hard to see at the moment. But I would just like to move on to the next slide and I can provide some historical background on this building. So it was constructed in 1870, beginning with the rear of the house. The front of the house was completed 11 years later in 1881. It was actually split up into multiple units until 1982, when some major refurbishment was done to a fairly poor standard at the time, which reinstated it as a single home property. There was an additional major refurbishment around about 1990 to repair significant termite damage that occurred to various parts of the building. If we could go to the next slide, please. So I myself moved to St. Louis in 2017 and really kind of fell in love with the Soulard area and some of the history surrounding here. So when we moved into this house, one of the first things we did was starting to work on restoring the landscape to what it had been previously, bringing in apple trees to the front garden where there had previously been an orchard, and sort of conducting quite a large amount of work in trying to restore this house back to looking like it originally looked, and in my opinion, its heyday of the 1930s. If we could advance on to the next slide, that would be great. So one of the things that we had to deal with when we moved in here was that the windows on both the public facade of the house and the side elevation were in real dire need of repair and actually replacement. The front windows had very significant rot and have been permanently sealed in a closed position, I think, in the refurbishment in the 1990s. The side windows that we are discussing today were mid-90s, early 2000s Pella, which had rotted on the upper levels to the point where some of the sash frames had collapsed, which were causing very significant safety hazards, as effectively double glazed units were unsuspended about 40 feet above the ground. And I think it's also worth noting here the materials used here, which is primarily aluminium panning around the sides and mixed aluminium wood construction on the actual glazing. If we could go to the next slide. So I think something we need to do is hold our hands up completely. We did not seek a building permit initially for this window replacement, as it's not required by either Missouri or STL building code. And I must confess, I was completely ignorant of the historic ordinance requirement. I was aware that this was a historic area, but had no requirement of that. Our installer and dealer, however, advised us that they had significant experience and that no permit was required, primarily as the window shape was not changing for the front and the sides did not fall under the historic ordinance. I think one point of order I would like to raise, and I think Jack, I would implore you to provide some assistance here, is that in reading the minutes for previous sessions of this meeting, it appears that there is a recurring theme where licensed contractors in the St. Louis region are misrepresenting the situation with regard to building permit requirements. This is a fairly common theme, of which I think there's 5 or 6 cases over the last 3 years of homeowners being misinformed by contractors who believed that they were doing the right thing. And so I can provide, if we go to the next slide, I can then provide a little bit of the sort of history of what happened next, effectively, which was we received notification of the ordinance violation on the 10th of the 6th. We were advised by Bethany Moore to split these into 2 for the front windows and the side windows. The side window, I split the costs, sort of trying to do that as much as possible in the city's favor. Overall, the project was around about $14,800. The end result was that the side windows were approved at the end, sorry, the front windows were approved at the end of the 7th, and the actual approval was issued on the 20th of this month. The side windows were denied via email on the 18th. This only actually happened after I found a CRO employee in our side garden on our private property saying that they were building a case against our appeal on the assumption that we would do so. So that when it was asked whether we had got a letter of support from local residents or things like the SRG, there's literally not been time to obtain any of that information prior to coming into this meeting. It's been such a fast turnaround. If we could go to the next slide, please, which just I think details the 6 windows that are in question here. And then the following slide after this provides both a direct view of these windows. Sorry, can we scroll down to the next slide again? This slide here shows the windows in their most unfavorable light as they can currently be seen, and also a view from the sidewalk, showing them as clearly as they can be seen today. I'm afraid some of the next slide I'd like to move on to, I think, unfortunately, as Andrea touched on at the start, has somewhat changed. Initially, these windows were rejected as they were on a public facade. However, after Fred Andres, who wrote the standard for the public facade, submitted his evidence on Friday, this story changed. So as a result, I kind of think that the next slides that we go to on public facade is now rather irrelevant, as it details that the original reason for denial was faulty because only the first 3 inches of the left side is deemed as a public facade under the ordinance. Could we move on to the next slide now? Thank you. One thing that I know is rather immaterial to the grand scheme of things is that we had plans to paint the windows to match that of the rest of the house, matching that color scheme. In the actual uppermost sashes on the side elevation are painted, and we were starting work on the rest of them, however, halted that work pending the outcome of this permit review. Appendix 2 here, I think this is worth pointing out in terms of the evidence that the CRO has presented in their presentation. Obviously, the standards refer to visual dominance from the street. The photo that was presented by the CRO of the side street was actually taken 16 feet from the front facade. And as a result, don't really represent sort of the view that is possible from public facade. Can we move on to the next thing? And this I think is sort of rather indicative, unfortunately, of, again, I'm aware this doesn't really play into the actual procedure and reading of the standards, but I think that we clearly have an issue in terms of communication. Our mission with what we are trying to achieve with this house is to comply with the standards and actually work with the city in order to make good on this situation. Unfortunately, at 12:13 p.m, we submitted the original copy of this and a letter of support on Friday. At 12:33 p.m. on Friday, the reason for denial was changed. At 1:11 p.m, we received a copy of the final agenda for this meeting. And at 1:33 p.m, the final agenda was changed again with different rationale for the reason of denial. And unfortunately, it really makes it very hard as a resident to understand the process that is going on here. I think we can probably move on to the next slide now, which is the reason for denial that was given at 12:33 p.m, where it was stated that it was originally sort of deemed as public because of a carport. However, there is actually no carport anywhere on this street that is between these two buildings. I'm also assuming that there is a typo here. And if we could then move on to the next slide. And this is just the final revision that we got, noting that it was now being a semi-public facade because of the distance of our side yard. So if we could move on to the next slide and have a look at this. The ordinance defines a semi-public facade as a side elevation which faces a vacant lot or a side yard at least 15 feet wide and are visually dominant for a street. The side yard for South 12th Street is over 15 feet wide. It's approximately 19 feet wide, and therefore this obviously needs to be taken into consideration. However, there are a couple of factors, which is that the house is elevated 7 feet from the street. The front facade is 53 feet 6 inches back from the sidewalk. The closest window opening to the sidewalk is a further 12 feet 3 inches further back from there. So we're talking about windows which are 65 feet at minimum and the closest angle, edge to a sidewalk, let alone the actual street. The surrounding buildings and landscape further obstruct the visibility of the side elevation. And with our intention to paint the windows, the color and appearance all materials used match that of the rest of the property. It is our contention that at this distance, it would be impossible for someone to identify that these windows were made out of fiberglass as opposed to wood wrapped in vinyl, which is a material allowed under the regulation. And I actually, with that, I would draw reference to the last paragraph of the introduction to the standards, which states that materials are subject to change over time, and it rests at the discretion of the board and the commission to decide whether such alternate materials would be acceptable. And I would implore you to consider our case on those grounds. A couple of points about the configuration of this window. It's pointed out here that the lift rail doesn't meet the standard. I'm a little confused by that. My understanding of the non-clementia here is that the lift rail is an internal fixture to the window and therefore has no effect on the external appearance of the property. The dimensions of all the window sashes, frames and moldings were sized to replicate that of the windows that they replaced. And the finished metal, which in this case is aluminium, is approved as a material for arch fill. And the brick molding that came in was one that was identical to what was there before. The last slide I'd like to show here shows the one of the original Pella windows here. As painted, which actually shows that although the coloring makes it look incredibly different, all dimensions of all elements of the sash and the frame are within ½ an inch of the original in terms of things like the bottom bar and all of the surround for the windows. And with that, I would sort of ask if anyone has any questions or would like to discuss that.
I have one quick question. It's a bit of housekeeping. Was the testimony you just gave us the truth?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have questions? Signify by waving your hand wildly so I can see you. Alderman Coder?
Thank you, Chairman Callow. Peter, thank you for this presentation. This has been very interesting. I guess, can you go back to your slide about timing? I'm a little confused. And sorry, I was wrapping up a separate call simultaneously, but to walk me through again the timing of sort of when you got notice of this versus you being here in front of the board today.
Sure. I got informal notice of this on the 18th of this month when Andrea Gregan was in our garden. I discussed that via email, and the CRO apologized. They explained that with COVID and due to recent staffing changes, the letter had not been sent out notifying me of the denial, and that has been issued by email. I have not received a mailed copy of the letter. So as a result, we have had about 4 working days in total to prepare for this appeal.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And just to be clear, sorry, one more question. You're intending on painting these windows to match your front windows or whatever the old windows, same paint scheme?
Exactly the same paint scheme. That is work that we had started, but obviously stopped doing as a result of this, and it is
okay.
our intention to do so. Our goal with this is to keep the exterior of the house looking exactly as it does in sort of historic context.
Got it. Thank you. Nothing further, Chairman.
Commissioners, any other questions? Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak on this subject? Okay then. Commissioner Richardson, have you got a motion?
I do not.
Commissioner Hamilton, have you got a motion? Commissioner Catlin, have you got a motion?
No, I'm not going to move on this one. I'm still thinking about it.
I'll
Commissioner
make
Tract.
one, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Vines?
I move to overturn the director's denial due to some inconsistent communication and the fact that the appellant has, in my opinion, demonstrated a clear effort to be a conscientious steward of this building. And I think, yeah, communication is key, and I don't think the communication was clear and consistent in this case.
That's going to be
Second.
a very, that's going to be a very,
That's a convoluted,
that's going to be a
that's a
very long
convoluted
motion.
motion. Okay, well, I
I'll
move to
second
let
that
in
motion.
succinctly. Okay, yeah, my motion is to overturn the director's denial in this case.
Okay.
I second.
Second.
Okay, so there's 2 seconds. That's either a fourth or a half. I'm not sure how that arithmetic works. Okay, Commissioner Vines, I've heard your discussion. Are there other commissioners who wish to discuss this motion? Wave your hands if you do. Alderman?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would, Peter, thank you for doing your homework and your presentation. And, you know, I'm a little concerned about the fact that, you know, you're given a matter of days to do this. I know you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this. I don't even know that SRG, the Soil Restoration Group's aware of this, given the time frame it was on. That said, I walk by this house every day. The effort you guys have put into restoring it is unbelievable. The place looks great. I love your new, I guess those are apple trees in the front. They look awesome. I would question whether this is a public, a semi-public facade on the south side of your house. And I'm supporting Randy's motion and will vote to overturn the denial and look forward to seeing the windows once painted.
I agree.
Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, this is Dave Richardson. I mean, I think I support the motion, but I don't, I mean, I have to, you know, defend the staff here that this is all moving quickly, and it looked like it just came to them on July 23rd. And so, you know, getting an agenda out the door and, you know, analyzing it. So, I mean, this all was started because he did the work without a permit. And if it was done with the permit, you know, there'd be more time and there'd be a process and things like that. So, I mean, I think I support the motion. I don't really I support the motion of allowing the windows. I don't support the rationale of, you know, blaming the staff here.
Further comments?
Chairman, one more. I guess I'd be curious from the applicants to know who was their window contractor. I don't know if I missed that.
I purposefully withheld from saying it.
Well, let's name names.
Fisher Window and Door.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, I believe this concludes the testimony on this matter. There's a motion on the floor. It has been made and seconded. To remind you, passing this motion will overturn the director's denial. I'll call a roll. Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Catlin, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Fathman, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
The chair abstains, the motion carries, and the director's denial is overturned. Thank you all. Moving to the next agenda item, which is agenda item B before you. I call 2852 Russell Boulevard.
Hello.
Hi, this is
We'll begin with the staff.
Okay.
This is 2852 Russell Boulevard. This is the building in question. The owner applied to replace the front porch. This, like I said, this is the existing front porch, which has been severely altered, to say the least. This is the location near the corner of Russell, Nebraska. This is the existing porch, and the porch next door, which is on a nearly identical building. Although the stone and rail probably were added at a later date, and the bottom of it has been changed somewhat, the above the piers appears to be original to the building. So when the applicant applied, we had some issue with the design. And actually, let me show you that first. This is the proposed porch design. Our biggest issue was with the double columns and the front gable. We don't have a problem with it being a full width porch. It's obviously that's what was there originally, and then this is just a side elevation of the porch, which was revised somewhat to match the side of the building next door. The issue is that there is little or no evidence on the building as to the appearance of the original porch. Like I said, however, the nearly identical building to the east give clues as to what the porch may have looked like. Above the stone piers, the porch appears to be original. And these are the proposed, basically, historic model examples that were proposed for the porch. Now, there are elements of what they're wanting to do on each of the porches, but none of them have all of the elements. Although the proposed historic model examples are of a similar time period, they represent a number of architectural styles. Combining all of these elements onto a single porch would serve to change the architectural style of the building and give it a false historic appearance. None of these are really the same architectural style as the building, which has some Romanesque revival detailing on it. And like I said, the main factors are the double columns with the wide piers and the front gable. This is just some context across Russell and some context on either side of 2852 Russell. The porch is proposed to replace the existing altered front porch. It is not based on a single model, historic model example, but on a number of elements from a number of separate HMEs. The proposed porch would alter the original architectural style of the building. The upper portion of the front porch on the adjacent building would serve as an appropriate HME. Due to this, the Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the application to replace the front porch as it does not comply with the Fox Park Historic District standards. And I just realized I also need to enter into the record the neighborly ordinance 64689 admitted by 64925, the Fox Park Historic District Ordinance number 66098, the application agenda, and the PowerPoint.
Great, thank you. Questions? Commissioners? Alderman?
Andrea, anything from the Fox Park Neighborhood Association?
No.
Okay, or Alderwoman Ingracia?
No.
Further questions, commissioners? Okay, thank you. Let's hear from the appellant, please.
Hi, my name is Patrick Campbell, and I vow that the information testimony I give here is truthful. And I'm speaking on behalf of Suzanne Schumacher, the homeowner. I am a drafter, and I helped Sue come up with the initial design and put together the set of drawings. So I will start by just explaining kind of how we got to our design. Or the intention was to replace the existing porch at 2852 Russell. Now that porch, as far as I could tell, was not original to the house, and it's in the current porch, which is a concrete slab on 8-inch CMU wall. It's in disrepair, the concrete's spalling and stuff. So we were going to replace that. And as we did it, she also wanted to add some kind of some flair to the facade, get rid of the wrought iron columns and railing there, which are also rusting out of the bottom. So they need to be replaced. So I came up with this design. And I checked initially when we meted with the Fox Park district standards, and I basically concluded that I did not know that we would need to follow the next door building. If that was there seems to be that, we have to follow what's next door. I was under the impression that, we had to just follow design elements that were present within the Fox Park neighborhood. Let me see here. Per model example, section 101.13 in the standards, a design proposed for construction, reconstructing will result in a building element. Now it said they're building elements, and that's, kind of where I started going with it. So I drove around Fox Park and observed the different styles and what was going on. And I came up with this design. Now the new porch would be similar in dimension to the existing porch that's there in the footprint, the square footage, and we're going to be rebuilding the roof with basically existing slopes. So we'd be going at the same elevations, heights, verticals that we would dimensions that of what's existing. Now the new porch would be composed of like 6-inch reinforced CMU walls with a brick veneer, and that brick veneer would be to match the existing. And would have piers that extend above the porch floor and support the new wood columns. Now, the reason I chose the double columns like that was we wanted to do kind of a wider pier proportionally, and to kind of provide a little bit more privacy. As you can see, the existing porch, it's just open. There's just not much there. So having a little bit more of that brick pier gives you that privacy that they're looking for. Now, the reason of choosing the double columns was mainly because of scale and proportionality. And as I provided in examples, the historic examples. Now, originally we submitted the beginning of May, and my understanding of rejection was that I needed to come up with some new historic examples. And these are the historic examples that replace the old ones. Now I chose 3524 Halliday, which is in Tower Grove East, and similar in size to the existing building, not the porch, but the building's size. It has basically the brick base, similar to what we're going for, and the paired columns. Now those paired columns are much more proportional when you start bringing up that pier. Now, using a wider column, it would just make it look, a single column would just have to be wider and would look stout, and just, and if I did it too thin, it would look, too thin and kind of out of proportion. Hold on, get back on track here. Now, basically we submitted initially, and I was told we have to come up with some new model examples. And that's what I did. And I kind of worked with Andrea. This is kind of like, she helped me make sure that things were in the appropriate time. And these were the ones my client and I found. One of the other examples there is 2912 Geyer. And I feel that one is kind of more towards what we're trying to do with the porch. Now that existing building is like kind of similar foursquare to the project we're doing at 2852 Russell. So I feel that roof and then the base of the Holiday are the best examples of what we're trying to do. Now, the difference, I guess, with Guyer and what we're trying to, our roof, is that it hips on the side a little bit, but we're doing it more like a shed. Now, nowhere I saw that, like I said, in the design example or the model example under 101.13 of the standards, that it has to be the building next door. Now, I might have misread that somewhere, but, or, you know, but I didn't see it. And in one of the PDF I received for this agenda, CRO they cited section 206.1, which I also have in front of me, and it says model example, and then in parentheses, individual elements. So I also didn't, you know, the idea that you can't, has to be an exact replica of it somewhere in the neighborhood I was unaware of, and I don't see that anywhere in the literature here. So I had the two different design examples, and basically we just kept doing back and forth with email with CRO, trying to find, is this good enough yet? What's going on? And then eventually I got in a hold with Dan Krasnoff, who said that, you know, we'd have to reject it. It's a lovely design, but, you know, just to bring it for appeals. And we feel that what we put together does have a historic feel and does not have any elements to it that are abstract for the Fox Park standards or the neighborhood or the feel of the look of the neighborhood. One of the things we want to try to maintain to our proposed design is having the gable end, which we feel over the stairs, which gives it a nicer sense of entrance. And of course the brick piers and the paired columns like that, because it's just, you know, gives us a little bit more base to the, you know, visual base to our porch, as well as proportionality. Now, I was asked why we didn't use the building next door, and I have, excuse me here, just a second, I have part of an email chain I need to go where. So Andrea had wrote on the 12th of May and asked, is there some reason that we didn't use the building next door as the model? Instead, we don't usually mix and match elements. And I respond with, one of the things I was trying to get a little bit more, one thing that's similar to the building next door is the sense of heights. And we wanted the soffit to be a new soffit on there because we don't have one at the moment. And kind of like a facial panel with depth similar to what's next door. So proportionally would be similar, but as far as exact style, we wanted something a little bit nicer. And we, didn't feel that the adjacent building at 2850 was completely original. Obviously, the base, it has the permastone, and it's on CMU block with a concrete slab, almost similar to what we have going on now. Just a second. So, I mean, the fact that we're rejected, it's almost kind of like we're doing too much, which is kind of, I think, different. Most people don't seem to be doing enough. So it's kind of, we're willing to tone down a few elements here and there, but we would like to maintain with what our proposed design is and feel that it's not abstract to the Fox Park historic standards. And like I said, I was unaware of anywhere in there that said that we have to use the building next door, because I didn't feel it was original either. So I guess that kind of concludes where we were trying to go with that.
Okay, let's see if we have questions. Commissioners?
I have a question.
Commissioner Vines?
Yes. It's surprising to me that, is that part of the ordinance where it has to mirror the building next door for something like this? I haven't heard that either.
Commissioner Vines, to whom did you
Oh,
direct?
I'm sorry. I suppose I'm directing that to cultural resources.
No, we didn't say he had to follow that. We just offered that would be a good model example.
Okay. Thank you.
He didn't have to follow that particular model example.
Thank you.
Further questions, commissioners?
Yeah, so I have a question for Andrea. So, isn't model example supposed to be under this ordinance that it's located in the Fox Park Historic District? Generally speaking, right?
Generally, yes.
And
And it's supposed to be the same architectural style. I
Right.
think that's
so that was my other one. It's supposed to be a comparable form or architectural style.
right.
Then aren't you just supposed to pick like one building as opposed to combining? Okay. Thank you.
Further questions, commissioners?
And Mike Killeen here. So no letters, to clarify, I think the Alderman's question will come in support of this. Is that correct?
What was your question?
Do we have any letters of support from anybody on this?
I did not receive any particular letters. I know my client received the initial rejection letter back in May. And then I was just trying to work through email and phone call with
Sorry,
Andrea.
I'm sorry.
And then last month she was out of town. So that's when I started talking to Dan Krasnoff.
I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell. That was actually a question for staff. So, but you've answered it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Further questions, commissioners? Okay, is there anybody else here to testify on this matter? Okay, that concludes testimony in this matter then. Commissioner Hamilton, have you got a motion?
Yes. My motions that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the application as the proposed porch does not comply with Fox Park Historic District standards.
Is there a second, commissioners?
Second.
Sorry, who seconded?
Richardson?
Thank you, sir. Discussion?
I would say that Mr. Campbell's done a good job of coming up with a design that looks like it might work, but I think it's just getting into the details of making sure we have one model example. It doesn't have to be the house next door, and we follow the rules. Because if we let everybody do this, they could come up with something crazy. You haven't, but you don't have any letters of support to support this, so we've got to go back to the standards. So I think you gave it a good try here, but I think one more round and you can get it if you can find a good model example.
Along those lines, Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would just encourage the applicant to go talk to the Fox Park Neighborhood Association. They have a code review committee. I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you on, paring this design down or finding another example somewhere in the neighborhood that works.
Other comments? Hearing none, there is a motion on the floor that has been made and seconded. Approving this motion would uphold the director's denial. Commissioner Bathman, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
The chair abstains. The motion is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we proceed calling 3001, 3003 McNair.
Stephanie Moore of the Cultural Resources Office, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
I would like to read into the record Ordinance 64689, the enabling ordinance as amended by 64925. Ordinance 67175, which is the Benton Park standards. The PowerPoint, the agenda, this presentation, the applicant's PowerPoint, which will go after me, as well as two letters, one from the neighborhood and one from the alderman, which I will also read after this presentation. All right, this is 3001 McNair Avenue. This is the building. As you can see, it is on a corner. It sits on McNair and Crittenden Street. So it faces McNair, and then the visible section of the fence that we will be talking about is on Crittenden Street. And this is an appeal of a denial to construct a horizontal fence that does enclose the rear of the property. And here is the view of the fence from Crittenden looking towards the property. And it will be enclosing along Crittenden, along the rear, and then over where this wooden fence is as well. And then here's an example of the construction of the fence. And the construction of the fence is where it does not meet the standards. It complies with the standards for high fences because it is, the height is 6 feet, which is the highest that it can be. And then it also complies for location because it is proposed to be at the building line at the rear of the property. But then when we get to number 3 in the standards for high fences, it says they shall be one of the following types, and then it lists 5 types. The first of which it does not comply with is boards should be placed vertically if the structure of the fence shall not be visible from the public facade. As you can see, these boards are not vertical and the structure is also visible. And then if it does not meet 1 through 4, it can also be based on a model example, which is a historic fence of similar age to the property and style. And it is not based on a model example. And because of those reasons, the Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the permit to construct the horizontal fence as it does not comply with the Benton Park Local Historic District standards. And then I would also like to read the letters that I had that were submitted. First, I'll read the letter from the Neighborhood Association. It says, Dear Ms. Moore, the Benton Park Neighborhood Association Review Committee met with Joel and Stephanie Steele at the regular meeting on December 11th, 2019. The request to install a mixed material privacy fence was considered. The desired fence utilizes tubular aluminum framing with a channel on the fence posts. Boards are then stacked horizontally. Per the Benton Park Historic District standards, horizontal fence boards are not permitted. The committee supports the construction of the fence with this tubular framing system, but requests that the boards are installed vertically. Respectfully, Don Morgan, President. And then this is the letter that was sent from the alderman. This was not sent in your packet. We did just get it today before the meeting. It says, Dear Director Krasnoff, I approve of the mixed material privacy fence proposed for 3001 McNair Avenue. My support is based on the review and support provided by the Benton Park Neighborhood Association Review Committee. While the mixed metal and wood materials are not typical to the historic district standards, I believe they provide a clean and contemporary look that will complement the neighborhood aesthetics. In reference to the horizontal placement of the wood, I believe there are numerous examples of horizontal fencing in the neighborhood that do not distract from the historic appearance of the brick buildings. There have been other horizontal fences approved, such as the metal panels located at 2901 Indiana Avenue. Thank you for your time and consideration. Should you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me. Dan Gunther, Alderman, 9th Ward.
That it?
Yes, those are the letters, yes.
Thank you very much. Questions, commissioners? Okay, hearing none, let's hear from the appellant, please.
The appellant is Joel Steele.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm glad that the global Zoom meltdown was rectified by this afternoon. We could all have this meeting. So thank you for inviting us into your Zoom room and letting us participate in this meeting. We have a short presentation that we'd just like to go through.
Before you do begin it, is your testimony going to be the truth?
Yes, it will.
Okay, we're just building a record here.
Nope, understood. Thank you for the reminder to tell the truth. So this
that only applies till midnight.
Okay, got it. Good to know. That'll be hard for me anyway. So just by way of introduction, my name is Joel Steele. My wife Stephanie is here with me. We moved into into Benton Park neighborhood in late 2007. And so we've been in here we've been in the neighborhood that entire time since. We bought this property, 3001 McNair, in 05, 04? 13, sorry, yeah. Wrong decade. That was not an intentional lie. Yeah, so we bought it in 13. I think we moved it in 2014. We did a complete gut rehab, spent several $100,000 rehabbing this place. Number one, because we love it and we want to be here, but we also just love this neighborhood. So we're invested. We've got our 4 children here. We are raising our children in this in the city and in the neighborhood, and we love it. We don't want to go anywhere. We've been working on a backyard project, potential backyard project, for a couple years. What has kind of made this a little bit more urgent is we've, as you could, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I guess you can't see it here, but we got home the weekend of Thanksgiving, and we have a chain link fence, and it is unlocked. We got home, and one of our 4 AC condenser units had been stolen. So that has just really given us cause to ramp up the process of getting our backyard done, which includes a new fence. So this is what it currently looks like. You know, 1970s era chain link fence, which we all agree is beautiful, but it is failing, and it does not lock, or at least not very efficiently. And we would sure like to have some security more than privacy, but privacy as well. So this is what it currently looks like. You can go on to the next slide. What we're going to try and do is just show, number one, some examples of what we want to do, and then also some examples in the neighborhood of where mixed materials are used, where horizontal is used, where non-standard fences are pre-existing in the neighborhood, and then talk a little bit about the historical significance of horizontal aesthetics. So this is just one example. We can go on to the next one as well. There's 3 of them here. Same type of fence, and you can go on to the next slide. Here's a 3rd example. This is a very handsome fence, in our opinion. We hope that you agree as well. But let's look at some of the examples in the neighborhood. If you could go on to the next slide. This is 2861 Salina. This is an example. It's not horizontal, it's vertical, but it's also a mixed material, which I understand we've already have a letter from the neighborhood that has given support for mixed material, but we wanted to show an example of that as well. Let's go on to the next one. All of these examples are in our neighborhood. They're all within the confines of the Benton Park neighborhood. This is 2901 Indiana, Pestalozzi Point, with mixed material as well as horizontal. It's not horizontal boards, but horizontal type construction as well, just around the corner from our house. Go on to the next one if you don't mind. This is just simply an example. We're not proposing to do something like this, but just an example of a non-standard fence that we would find in the neighborhood. Next. So this is just half a block down the road from our house. This is an example, 2008 Crittenden of horizontal aesthetic fence. And the next slide shows just around the corner from same property, horizontal construction fence / wall for a carport. Now that's not technically public facade. It sits off the street a bit. I believe there's going to be a house that will be built in front of that eventually, but as of right now, it's visible from the from Crittenden. So next slide. This is 2126 Wyoming, just south of Benton Park, with a horizontal fence, also within a quarter mile or so of our house. And we just have a couple more of these, I think, as well, if you want to go along. We'll go through these quickly. This is bordering Fremont Park. Another example is 2829 Wisconsin of horizontal construction as well. And the next one, 2310 and 12 Pestalozzi, horizontal construction, also around the corner from the structure from this property. We don't have a picture of it, and it's along an alley, so again, not public facade, but horizontal fencing all the way around the back of the property as well. Very attractive fence. You can go on. This here is a 2941 Cherokee. It's a little hard to tell in the detail here. You'd have to zoom in because it's a painted fence, but those are also horizontal boards. You can kind of see the light shining through there. Not sure the date of this fence. By the looks of it, it's been there for quite a while. I'm not sure how historic it is, but again, an example of a pre-existing horizontal wood fence construction. And we can go on. Okay, this is 2201 Cherokee. This is the fence directly behind the Whisk Bake Shop that sits on Cherokee. This fence is actually along Missouri. But again, another example within our neighborhood of horizontal wood construction. And next, I think we're probably getting close to the, now we showed this as an example of just horizontal aesthetic. This isn't a fence, but just, this is 2860, it is new construction. Again, it's a wall on a carport visible from the street.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily a public facade, but again, it's just another example of the aesthetic, the horizontal aesthetic. So I think one more. And this, of course, is not a fence at all. This is 3001 Missouri, but horizontal clap boarding, clap siding, the horizontal aesthetic is all around us, even historic, and we are looking to essentially replicate, that horizontal aesthetic. So I think there's just 2 more slides here. We'll move quickly. So at the time our neighborhood was being developed and our house being built in the 1880s and early 1900s, a couple of the main major industries in St. Louis was farming, agriculture, milling, and tobacco production. So we provided here a couple examples of this particular structure is in Innsbruck. It's not in St. Louis, I understand, but it is at least representative of a horizontal type of construction, horizontal aesthetic, wood as well, that would have been prevalent around this time. But it also ties to an industry that was vitally important to St. Louis. This one being tobacco, but in the next slide is another example of a tobacco barn. And then the next slide is an example of a corn crib, which is actually irrelevant for this discussion, but also near and dear to both Stephanie and my heart. So we both grew up on farms, corn farms specifically. This type of horizontal wood crib construction would have been not only indicative of things we grew up with, but indicative of structures that would have been built and prevalent in this area at the time our neighborhood was being developed. And also, again, ties back to a very important industry at the time that our neighborhood was being developed and home was being built. So I think that's all we have.
Commissioners, questions? I have to say, I enjoyed the side tour into the aesthetic of horizontal construction very much. And while possibly irrelevant, it was certainly interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioners, questions of the appellant? Okay, hearing none. Is there anybody else here to testify on this matter? Okay. Let's see then. Commissioner Fackman, have you got a motion?
I have an emotion.
Hang on 1 second while Melanie figures out how to unmute. Nope, not yet, Melanie.
Did she say somebody?
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I propose that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial for the permit to construct the horizontal fence as a project development does not comply with the Benton Park Historic District standard.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Second,
Commissioner, I heard-
second,
I'm sorry?
Richardson.
Okay, there is a second. Discussion? Melanie?
Well, I don't mind horizontal one. I think it's the mixed, well, it just doesn't comply. Simple as that.
Okay, Commissioner Catlin?
Just looking at the presentation, I noticed a couple of projects in there that were approved by this board. The UIC project on Indiana, my project on Indiana with the steel horizontal boards, not boards, but panels. And that actually went through the Benton Park Neighborhood Association and got approval. I don't know if UIC got approval for theirs, but mine truly was a fence. So I think to be consistent with past rulings, it's only fair that we allow this to go forward as presented. Also, that alderman's letter kind of equivocated. I think he was trying to pay some kind of respect to the neighborhood building review committee, but I think he also said, hey, there's a lot of horizontal in the neighborhood. So in Benton Park, another thing they showed is those Japanese looking fences there on Lemp Street. Benton Park, I was part of this committee that wrote the standards. We try to keep the funk in Benton Park a little bit, and I think this would be a good example of a funky thing that would actually add to the neighborhood's appeal. So I would vote no for this motion.
Is there further discussion?
Hello? Yeah. Hello?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if the neighborhood is supporting this and the alderman's supporting this, and it looks a lot nicer than that painted horizontal gray fence, I don't see why this would be a problem. So that's what I think.
Further discussion?
I'll echo the comments that have been made. I think enough examples were shown of mixed materials and horizontal fences to satisfy me in voting no on this motion.
Alderman Coder?
Yeah, I join. I'm going to vote no on the motion and vote to overturn the denial on a future motion, hopefully. I think the fence looks great. You know, I guess maybe I just need to educate myself on the standards better, but I'm a little confused about how this standard is written regarding vertical. I mean, it seems to say that the boards need to be vertical if they're not visible. Anyway, that's for me to be better educated by the board. But I'm going to vote against this. It's got the support of the alderman, who I think sort of disagreed with the neighborhood, who doesn't like the vertical. But either way, it looks great, and the presentation was very informative. Thanks.
Commissioner Richardson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my only comment is, again, it clearly violates the standards. And so I think it looks nice as well, but then I would encourage Benton Park, if we're taking the position, Commissioner Catlin, that, we're going to allow this, then I would, perhaps encourage that neighborhood to rewrite their standards to expressly allow the horizontal.
That's a good point. You're right.
Any other comments? Okay, commissioners, there's a motion on the floor. Voting yes on this motion will uphold the director's denial. Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Catlin, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Fathman, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Did you sound disappointed by your own motion?
I am. And this is not forever. This fence is not forever, so I don't have a problem.
The motion fails. Do I hear a new motion? Commissioner Vines?
Sure. I move to overturn the director's denial, citing abundant evidence of other fences built in with mixed materials.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I don't think we need to have further discussion.
Richardson has one point on that motion. I mean, so we didn't have any evidence that all of those actually were lawfully done. So I support the motion, but the additional language on it saying because there's other ample evidence of other horizontal fences, again, we didn't have express evidence that all those were lawfully permitted or approved by CRO, just for the record.
That sounds like a fair point. Commissioner Vines, you want to restate your motion or leave it as it is?
Yeah, I will just make it short and sweet that I move to overturn the director's denial.
Who made the second on that motion?
That was Coder. So what am I, withdrawing my second and seconding the new motion?
That's correct.
So be it.
Okay, I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Fathman, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
You're such a fair weather person today. Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Robinson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Coder, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, the chair abstains. The motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, agenda item D is 5745 Waterman, and let's go.
All right. Again, Bethany Moore, Cultural Resources, and I swear to tell the truth. I would like to read into the record Ordinance 64689, the enabling ordinance as amended by 64925, Ordinance 57688, which is the Skinker-DeBaliviere standards, the PowerPoint, the agenda, this presentation, as well as the information submitted by the applicant and emailed to the board members. All right. So this is 5745 Waterman Boulevard. It is an appeal of the director's denial to construct a retaining wall. And just a little bit of background on this. A stop work order was placed on this property. We did receive a complaint, and I went out there to inspect it and spoke with the owners and explained to them that they would need to apply for a permit. We did not get a permit application, so I did go back out and put a stop work order on. The only thing that had been done at that point was that it was dug out. The wall had not been built yet. And as you can see, here is a picture of the digging. Then a permit was applied for and it was denied because it does not meet the standards. Here is the house. It's on Waterman Boulevard. Here we go. The proposed retaining wall is supposed to be at a height of 22 inches, and it'll be on either side of the stairs on the primary facade facing the street. And here is a mock-up that they sent showing where the wall will be. And then this is also the material. It's a Versalock material, which is what the wall is proposed to be made out of. And then here are just some pictures for context of the block. This is looking directly across the street. As you can see, there is a retaining wall directly across the street from them. And then here are context shots looking west along Waterman. So the side of the wall will be here to the right where the earth is dug up. As you can see, there are not any retaining walls here. And then also this way, looking east along Waterman, and there are not any retaining walls here. And the earth terrace, which is what this slope is called here, has not been disturbed. All right, I will stay on this. I would like to mention that the standards do mention the earth terrace several times. There are several points about preserving the earth terrace. One of the ways that this retaining wall does not comply with the standards is that a retaining wall is only allowed to be built if 50% or more of the houses on the block have have had a retaining wall where the earth terrace has been disturbed. That is not the case on this block. I did a rough counting and there was 41 houses and only 7 of them had retaining walls, which is about 17%, not 50%. It is also in front of a street-facing facade, and that is not allowed unless it's part of a accessibility ramp arrangement, which this is not. There's no accessibility ramp proposed. And then also the material does not comply. The proposed wall will be constructed of cast concrete units of varied sizes and staggered coursing, not brick or stone, of the type, shape, and coursing as is common in historic walls, and it will not be laid with mortar, it will not be faced with brick or stone, which is what the standards require. It does also not have a cap of stone or brick, which is also something that the standards require. So based on the findings that the retaining wall is in the front yard and parallel to the public sidewalk, that the earth terrace has been disturbed less than 50% on the block, and the materials in the wall configuration does not meet the criteria for the standards, the Cultural Resources Office does recommend that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the permit to construct a retaining wall, as less than 50% of the block terrace has been altered, and therefore the project does not comply with the Skinker-DeBaliviere Historic District standards. And also, I did actually hear from the neighborhood. I was sent an email, and the neighborhood said that they are not in support of it, and that maybe if they came up with a different material, they would be, but they do not support the wall.
Okay. Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, this is Richardson. I had one question. In the packet of materials where that neighborhood's Nancy Holman, is that right? Or
correct.
Yes. Okay. There was also like 2 pages of signatures, but it didn't tell me if they were for or against the wall.
That when the owner speaks, she will speak to that. That was submitted by them.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Let's hear from the appellant.
The appellant is Megan Harrison, and she is here.
Hi. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Just to give you a little bit of background, my husband and I bought the home in the Skinker-DeBaliviere neighborhood in, 2006.
Let me interrupt you just for 1 second. Is your testimony going to be the truth?
Oh, yes, it is. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Please proceed.
We bought the home in 2016 and we spent about 9 months fixing it up. We had a contractor in here. It had been vacant for over 3 years at that point, and we specifically chose to bring our family to the city because of the historic nature of the houses. We love all of the intricate characteristics, and we're not trying to do something that's we feel is drastically different from that. So as you mentioned earlier, we did walk our neighborhood, our block specifically, the 5700 block of Waterman. Every neighbor that we spoke to was in agreement with the project. You can see there were 2 pages of signatures for it. We looked at pricing out a stone before any, sorry, my daughter's crawling on me. Before any of this happened, we did, and the estimate we got for a stone, which was a dry stack, was not like the masonry, was $1,600 compared to the Versalock system for $487. Also, to get non-dry stack stone, that would mean that we would not be able to do the work ourselves. So that's part of the reason we went with the Versalock system. You can see from the pictures that it's not just a squared off exact, cement block. Typically what I think of when I think of a cement block, it is what they call the tumbled or the weathered look. So it does look a bit older while still being the cement block. And I was in contact also with Nancy from the Historical Preservation Board at Skinker-DeBaliviere. The reasons that she cited for not being in favor of the project is that it's not an integral part of the property, which means people don't often maintain it, and gave the example of when a utility might need to come in and do work, they would have to cut the wall, and again, people would not want to maintain it, and then it would fall in disrepair. Which I understand those reasonings, but I also feel like behind those reasonings, you really wouldn't be in favor of any kind of project, a deck, a porch, a fence, anything like that. Also with the Versalock material, it's significantly easier to replace. If a utility did need to come in and take away part of the wall, you would just need the new bricks and the pins to place it in, place it back together. And if you could, I did submit a few pictures from some of the walls in the area. In our block, I apologize.
Those were emailed to the board members as part of the packet.
Okay, sorry, I thought they were going to be on the presentation, but you can see that their cement block, there is only one of the walls that actually meets the standards. It's brick, and a few of the bricks are chipped, and they have not been replaced, again, because it's substantially more time and effort to replace a few bricks out of that wall as opposed to the cement block. And yeah, so I did want to mention, Bethany came on a Friday evening and gave us the information. We were not aware that we needed a permit, and I know ignorance is not a defense at all. We walked our entire neighborhood, not just our block, because as she mentioned, there's 7 if you don't include, one is more of a planter box than a retaining wall, but kind of gives you the same aesthetic. It is pictured in the pictures that were sent out to you. We didn't count at the time, but we walked around and measured other people's walls because we did want to fit into the standard of the neighborhood, which ranged from about 18 to 24 inches. So then based on the height of meeting kind of in line with one of our stairs is where we came up with the 22 inches. So she came out on a Friday and she placed the stop work order on a Monday. So I had not applied for the permit at that point, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that the way it was presented. I did apply for the permit. I have 2 girls I was home with, and so that kind of limited exactly when I could, but I did go and apply for the permit. We never received any denial letter or denial email. In an email on July 15th, Bethany did say that she has our permit and she will deny it, but we never actually got any kind of a denial letter from the city. And yes, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, commissioners, questions? Bethany, is there anybody else here to offer testimony?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, then. Okay, commissioners, we are on somewhat familiar territory.
I'm sorry, I do have a question for the applicant. Sorry.
Yes.
So you look like I counted up, you had 19 different signatures on that, on what you collected. And so that petition was to support you to construct the wall as presented here this evening?
It is.
And did you have anybody on your block actively opposed?
No, as I said, anyone we spoke to readily agreed to sign the petition. I did have pictures so they could see. I gave them the height that we were proposing. We did not get to speak. I know she said, I believe 41 is what I counted. I believe that's what Bethany said as well. So there were some people who were not home or did not answer their door. I was wearing a mask, but also due to, you know, the time of COVID, I can see why some people were not willing to answer their door. But yes, anybody that we spoke to signed the petition. I did not have anybody who was against it on my block. I just spoke to people on my block though. Oh, and I did want to add, when we were digging out, there were some places where about 7 inches of dirt and debris were overtaking the sidewalk, which is kind of originally why we got the idea to build the retaining wall in the first place. With that slope that's mentioned in the standards, it's significantly harder to maintain. So that's kind of the reason we started looking into or talking about building a retaining wall.
Commissioners, further questions?
One more, and forgive me if this was already mentioned, but any word from Alderwoman Navarro about this project?
No, I did reach out to our Alderwoman. Her voice.
Which would not be Alderwoman Navarro.
Yes, it was Shameen.
Shameen Hubbard. Okay, you're on the east side of Skinker-DeBaliviere then. Okay.
So I did reach out to her a few times. Her voicemail, however, is not, I can't remember if it was not set up or if it was a full voicemail. So I probably reached out about 5 times. She did call me back once, but I was unavailable to take the call. So I missed that call, and the subsequent times that I tried to call her back, I was not able to get in contact with her.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, commissioners? Commissioner Catlin?
Yes, I have a question for the applicant and one for staff. So is it your testimony that this, I mean, just to clarify, that you need this retaining wall in order to stop an erosion issue at your front yard?
Yes, that's part of it. I mean, it's also, I think aesthetically, I think it looks nice, but yes, part of it is the erosion. We've had difficulty, like I said, the property was vacant for more than 3 years. So we've had difficulty kind of getting it under control. We would like to lay down sod, but we know some of our other neighbors have had issue trying to lay grass on our side of the street with that slope.
So you feel like just making it a berm is just not going to happen? The erosion issue wouldn't go away?
We foresee it still being an issue, yes.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, staff, just to clarify, can we have retaining walls at this site at all, or is it just because this material is wrong that we're having an issue?
No, in order to allow retaining walls, there first has to be 50% of the earth terrace disturbed on the block, and there's only about 17%.
Oh, I see. Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Commissioners, further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Robinson, are you still there? And would you like to make a motion? I don't think that's Commissioner Robinson making that noise.
Sorry, I can mute if you would prefer.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Richardson, have you got a motion?
That was not Commissioner Robinson, just for the record.
Okay, Commissioner Robinson, have you got a motion?
I move that we uphold the director's denial as the retaining wall does not meet historic district standards.
Is there a second for that motion? Commissioner, I hear no second for your motion. Would you like to make another motion?
Nope.
Commissioner Catlin, have you got a motion?
I move the Preservation Board override the director's denial and allow the wall to be built as designed.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, is there discussion of this motion? Commissioner Catlin?
We've got an erosion issue. I respect staff's trying to uphold the standards, but there's an erosion issue, and I think this is a handsome solution that's supported by a lot of the neighbors. So I think it's a good example of an exception that would be acceptable.
Commissioner Robinson, a comment?
Yeah, I think I personally think that the front could be graded and sod could be put down to eliminate the erosion issue, but I've seen much steeper front yards with no erosion issue once sod has taken. So that only leaves, it looks good. And I don't think that meets the criteria.
Commissioner Vines, you're no stranger to belaboring a point. Have you got a comment?
No, for lack of a better expression, I think it is kind of a slippery slope when you start, making exceptions to this this historic district standard. I was a resident of Skinker-DeBaliviere for many years, and I know that the historic district committee works really hard to kind of maintain those standards. I understand the decision making that goes into their support or lack thereof for something like this, but again, I know nothing about erosion and what that entails and all the expenses related to that. So I am willing to make an exception on this as per the motion.
Any other commissioners have comments? Okay, hearing none, there's a motion on the floor. A yes vote on the motion would overturn the director's denial. Alderman Coder, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
That didn't even sound like you.
Let me try again. Yes.
That does sound like you. Commissioner Catlin, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Fathman, do you vote yes or no?
No.
The chair abstains. The yeses have it, and the motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. That concludes agenda items A through D. We have a listed director's report here. Ms. Harrison, to be clear, you did prevail. We upheld your appeal.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, let's hear from the director, who is muted. Still muted. Extra muted.
I'm not muted anymore. I'm embarrassed to say I've joined the ranks of the people who have trouble unmuting. Let's go to the next slide. So I just have a couple projects I want to point out to folks, and I hope everyone can see these slides clearly enough. They look kind of small on my screen, but the first one is in the Lafayette Square neighborhood. It's a project at 1022 South 18th Street for new construction. The board granted preliminary approval to this project in 2019, in April of 19. You can see the picture above shows the vacant lot, which is at the corner property there. And then down below, you can see on the far left is a rendering, or not a rendering, is an elevation drawing of what the proposed building is to look like. It's a single family home. Next slide, please. The home is now completed. You can see two views of it in this photo, in this slide. The picture on the left shows the new building on the left-hand side. I took this one so it would give a sense for how it relates to its next door neighbor, which is to the right. So it's a brick building with arched windows, round arched windows on the first floor, and on the second story, it has segmentally arched windows. It has a stone foundation. The picture on the right shows the side view. I apologize, but you know, if this were winter, this would have worked a lot better. But you can see from the image there that you've got a side view with sort of a very traditional looking fenestration pattern, and then a horizontal, I mean a vertical privacy fence with metal framing around it, extending back towards the alley. I think this was a nicely executed project. The scale of the new house is slightly bigger than the historic homes to the right, but I think it blends well. If anything, I think it could be argued that for people who don't know very much about architecture might think this is a historic building and not a contemporary one. But I think the goal of the neighborhood and their standards with these projects was to create buildings that really blended in and really look like the historic buildings, and that's been achieved here. Next slide, please. The next project is a more involved one. It's on the 2700 block of Sydney Street in the Fox Park Local Historic District. It's also located in the St. Francis de Sales National Register District. So you can see to the north of this site is Fox Park itself, and to the south is a large project for an organization called Rung, which is a nonprofit that is a sort of women-oriented nonprofit to help female clients. So the project had a few different parts to it. I'm not going to focus so much on this first part, but you can see in the project site area on the left-hand side of it, on the western side of it, was a bunch of buildings that were demolished. This was a hodgepodge of buildings. I don't have pictures of them in this presentation. Most of them were sort of metal-sided structures. However, I will say on the northern end of it, along Victor Street, was a one-time historic building that had been really closed up so much and in so many different ways. It was basically a brick box. As I said, those were considered non-contributing buildings, and there was strong support from the DeSales Housing Corporation and from the neighborhood in support of those demolitions. So I granted those demolitions at the staff level, and then what the preservation board looked at was really the other 2/3 of the project, which was the rehab of the historic building, which is a factory building, and then in the addition, which is shown in blue, just east of it. And if we could go to the next slide. So this is a before picture. You can see on the left is the historic and industrial building that was rehabbed by the Rung organization. So this is a view looking east towards Jefferson, which is about a block and a half east of this site down Sydney Street. And then on the next picture is looking the opposite direction, back at the historic building you see on the left. This is looking at the side elevation of that factory building. And then there's a large vacant lot at the corner. If we could go to the next slide. The next I wanted to show was a model example, which is the building across the street from the industrial building that we just looked at. It's a one-story industrial structure dating from probably the early 20th century, I would guess, or late 19th maybe, but I would think early 20th. It's been pretty worked over, unfortunately, but still the sort of basic one-story flat-roofed construction with piers is evident on the design of it. And if we go to the next slide, please. Oh, we got the same slide twice. Let's go to the next slide. This is the rendering that the board saw at the meeting. Now, one thing that is particularly significant about this project, this was the first project the board reviewed under the contemporary construction policy that the board approved a couple years ago now. You see on the left-hand side is the historic factory building, and on the right-hand side is the proposed one-story addition to that building that has certainly elements that relate. One of the key elements, as you all know from other projects, is in Fox Park is that it requires a historic model example. We just saw the historic model example on the previous slide, that one-story industrial building that they kind of used as the basis, but they've taken, you know, whereas often the model examples are required to stick pretty closely to the program of the model example in terms of the design, the contemporary construction policy allows for greater flexibility from that, and that was what was proposed here. If we go to the next slide. So, so here are a couple pictures. Actually, can we push the slide up a little more? Thank you. So the top picture shows the new construction, which is almost complete. The new building is, I think, fully complete. The one-story section, and then you see the factory building as well. It's rehabbed. I believe confidently that the applicant, who I believe used Trivers as their architecture firm, constructed the building in accordance with what was shown to the board and what was shown to the staff. There are elements here that certainly relate to the historic structures around them and the model example in the scale of it and the use of material and the use of some consistently, you know, it's a darker brick, but it's still holds pretty closely along the top of the building. The vertical windows that go floor to ceiling and the fenestration pattern is certainly different from the historic building. And the whole goal of the policy was to allow for some more flexibility along the lines of contemporary design, while at the same time ensuring that there are compatible elements to the design. We're kind of looking for the Goldilocks effect here. We want people to be able to see that this is a 21st century building, but we also want folks who go by to not feel like this building just sticks out like a sore thumb, or in some ways overshadows the historic structure, which are after all supposed to be the stars of a historic district. The photograph below I wanted to add in because it shows just the kind of the front end of the new construction building, but it also shows the model example across the street and how the scale of those two buildings, I think, creates a design relationship between the two. I would love to see some more money put into the building across the street so that it maybe builds back some compatibility with the historic structures around it as well. When the board approved the contemporary policy, I made part of that presentation that I would come back in a year and we would discuss whether the policy is working or not. It's been more than a year. I haven't come back to you all because I wanted to get a few of the projects done that we could then look at more than one at a time. So this is not a substitute for that. What I would like to do within the next, let's say, 6 or 8 months, because we're starting to have some of these projects done now, is come back and make a presentation about the contemporary policy in a more in-depth way and give the chance for the board to give some feedback on that as well. I think that is the last slide. There may be another one here for some reason. Nope, that was it. So that concludes my report. If there are any questions for me, I'm happy to take those.
Dan, I have no questions on the presentation, but can you tell us a little bit about what your staffing is going to be like with Adonegon?